welcome. Please enter into the chat where you're viewing from and what birds you're seeing this week. So I should enter mine. I'm in Asheville and I saw a pair of towhees at my feeder and a song sparrow today.
Karen, send them down here.
I wish I could.
Actually, maybe they don't want to come down here right now.
Okay, Adam DeNovo is speaking to us, is viewing from, well, how do you say that? Pemaquid, Maine? Is that your uncle? No.
No, Adam is a former Audubon Florida down at Marco Island. Now he's up in, I believe, Maine doing work with puffins and stuff. So
he gets to see the stellar seagulls.
All right, Maureen Dwyer is in Sarasota from Haverford, Pennsylvania. And thanks to Martha Strauss for teaching her wingspan this weekend. Wonderful. We're glad you're enjoying the game and playing at the Nature Center. Allison Bishop in Sarasota is seeing catbirds, cardinals, mockingbirds, and blue jays.
And Adam did see the sea eagle. I'm so jealous.
oh, that is so awesome.
Phyllis White is here from Charlottesville, Virginia. Wonderful, seeing juncos, titmice, chickadee, cardinal, mourning doves, and bluebirds. Ooh, the bluebirds. We had them for a while. They come and go from in our feeder. And Kylie seeing Carolina wrens on her porch, building a nest. How fun. Leo Kessling saw a swallow-tailed kite carrying nesting material. Wonderful. Alan Gardner is in Oakley Green, and he's got little blue herons, brown thrashers, cardinal, titmouse. All right, nice.
Where is Oakley Green, in Florida?
In Sarasota.
It's in the meadows. Alan is one of my neighbors. Hi, Alan.
Wonderful. All right, who else do we have? We have 47 people out there, so tell us what you're seeing. Phyllis is seeing Carolina wrens, white-throated sparrow, and a nuthatch. Wonderful.
I miss nuthatches. We don't get enough of those down here.
Yeah, she's in Charlottesville, Virginia. So yeah, that was my first.
You can get them at Carlton.
Yeah,
right on the road there, but you have to listen carefully.
I think those are different nuthatches. So those are brown-headed in the Carlton. Yeah. I think Phyllis is probably seeing red-breasted or
white-breasted is what
white-breasted. Okay.
Holly Elmore is seeing mockingbird, robins, and blue jays in Sarasota.
So many robins this year. My gosh, it's just an explosion of them
everywhere.
Yep. Everywhere.
We're happy down there.
I think I've seen them just about every day for the last.
They're real snowbirds because they're going to leave soon.
Yep. And Jean Pitchler is viewing from Venice, Florida. Welcome. We love hearing where everyone's from. Yeah, Phyllis in Charlottesville is clarifying, yes, white-breasted nuthatches, lots of them. We've got them in Asheville as well. Alan Ross, no, you're not muted. We're on a webinar, so you don't, only our panelists can speak. That's why we use the chat. Jane Rufo is seeing white ibis, tufted titmouse, cardinals, and lots of nesting. Yes, it's that time of year. Larry Masters seeing swallow-tailed kites on Bailey Road in Venice. Louisiana water thrush, Cooper's hawks, and barred owl in Pinecraft. Susan Smitten is seeing lots of ibis in Mayaca.
Oh, Chuck Wills.
Oh, Chuck Will's Widows.
Yay, Margie. Margie's seen Chuck Will's Widows, 3 of them.
Wow.
Be better if I could spell it right, but you get the idea.
We knew what you were saying.
Yeah, we got it. We got it.
Quick fingers.
All right. Oh, Leo Kisling, lots of northern Peruas in his backyard. All right.
Hi, Evelyn.
Okay, well, why don't we get started? I'm just going to give a few housekeeping details and we'll go through a few slides. Jean's got some things to tell us and then we will get right into our program. So we are in a webinar, and so if you have a question for the speaker, please put that in the Q&A, which is either at the top or the bottom of your screen. And if you have a question for myself or anything regarding the program, I mean, the logistics of it, put it in the chat. It's easier for us, Margie and I, to keep track of questions for the speaker when they're in Q&A, but we will be checking both. And Kylie, after Kylie speaks, she will be answering as many questions as she can. So we do have, well, we're up to almost 60 at this point. We had quite a few more register, so we might get a few more, and that's about it. So this program will be available after tomorrow, as are all of our programs on our YouTube channel. So those links are on our website. So where you go to register at the website, after the program, our amazing webmasters upload the link there. Instead of the Zoom registration, it becomes the link for the video. So all of our videos are available. Oh my gosh, Larry Master, 45 snipe,
Oh, wow.
2 cranes and 2 stilts at celery fields this afternoon. Wow.
From
And
the
Chris-
Raymond Boardwalk, maybe those snipes. I think I saw them off Raymond Boardwalk a couple weeks ago.
Wow,
There's
I
been
didn't
a
know-
lot of snipe this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
A
And
lot
I
here too.
Christine Summers saw nesting great blue herons, glossy ibis, egrets, and hingas and cormorants at the Venice Rookery last night, of course. All right. Okay. So here, where are we? There we go. Jean, take it away.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. It's wonderful that you're here. We're so pleased to have Kylie tell us all about our beach nesting birds. Before we get into that, as you probably know, our bylaws indicate that we must vote for the executive officers at the April April general meeting. And so right now we're accepting nominations. Karen Schneider, Don Schneider, and Glynis Thomas are out there trying to find people who are willing to serve as either president, vice president, second vice president, or secretary. And also the treasury spot is open. All of these elections are just for 1 year. So we have to go through this every single year. If you have anybody you know who is interested in running, they can send an email to info@sarasotaAudubon.org. And what happens is at the April meeting, when we used to meet at the church hall in person, the election would take place in that April meeting. So whoever attended got to vote. So now we're doing it by email, by ballot. And so all of the people who will be attending the April general meeting via Zoom will receive a ballot afterwards. And if you are a member, you can then vote. And the voting will be open until 7 p.m. April the 11th. So in addition to elected officials, we are always looking for committee members or administrative people who have skills that can help us keep Sarasota Audubon ticking along. It would be wonderful if there's anybody out there who is an insurance expert so that they could review our insurance portfolio. We want to make sure that we're adequately covered. We believe we are, but it's always very good to have a review. We also need somebody to help the secretary to prepare minutes of the board meetings and to do any correspondence. And if there's anybody out there who has a particular skill that they would like to contribute to Audubon, we'd love to hear from you. So you can send that information to info@sarasotaAudubon.org. The other thing I want to say is I want to thank everybody who responded to our annual appeal. And so far, it's never too late to accept donations. And so if you have not sent in a donation, we'd be happy to have one from you. But thank you to everybody who has responded. Next month, I'll be able to tell you how many people responded and how much money we received. But it's been very, very heartening. So thank you. So Karen has put up that we need your local membership as well. The memberships renewals have been coming in fast and furious, and so that's really wonderful. If you have forgotten to do so, please send in your annual membership dues of $35. And is there and there's a Palmer Boulevard cleanup tomorrow. Frank Yarosh, who has stepped up to coordinate that program, would love to see you. He will give you reflective vests, gloves, bins, a nice little, what do you call those things? The way you pick up. Yeah.
Pickers.
Picker-upper. So at 9 o'clock tomorrow, that would be wonderful if you care to do that. Just spend an hour going back and forth along Palmer Boulevard to make it really sparkly. So that would be wonderful. And on Wednesday, we have Dr. Catherine Clements is coming from UF IFS Extension Service. And many of you have taken classes there, Master Naturalist, Master Gardener, and so many others that we want to hear from her what else she's got to offer our members. So that would be wonderful to see her. And we hope to see you all there at 2 o'clock and meet and greet. And now I'm going to turn you over to, so Kylie's giving a workshop on Thursday as well as a follow-up to today's program. So that would be wonderful if you have an inclination to help Kylie out on the beach and to help these marvelous birds. That would be wonderful. Or just come and learn some more of what goes on our beaches. And there we are. Over to Margie.
Thank you. So I'm very thrilled. We're very thrilled to have Kylie Wilson talk to us about the importance of the shorebirds and taking good care of them. And in light of the red tide, sending good vibes to all of the coasts along everywhere, include even Costa Rica. I'm getting sidetracked, but we need to send good vibes to Mother Earth and all of the beaches everywhere. And Kylie is so important for that. Locally, she's a native Sarasotan and has worked seasonally for Audubon, Florida as the local Shorebird Stewardship and monitoring coordinator since 2018.
Say that 5 times fast.
She graduated with a degree in biology from FSU, Florida State University in 2016. And upon taking an ornithology class in her sophomore year, she got totally converted to a full-blown bird nerd and hasn't looked back since. Florida can do that to you.
Yeah.
So when in her off season, she works on-call doing environmental consulting and volunteering with the local Audubon chapters. She enjoys traveling to new places to see birds. I want to be in your suitcase for the next one. And was fortunate enough to visit South Korea and Brazil in 2022. If asked what her favorite bird is, she would say it's impossible to choose just one, but probably the black skimmer. Have you changed that?
No, it's them.
It's our great pleasure to welcome Kylie, who does such a good job for us. And everybody who's listening, think seriously about whether you can go out on the beaches and help her.
Thank you so much, Margie. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here so we can get started with this presentation from the beginning. All righty. And can we all see the presentation now?
Great.
Good. All righty. So thank you so much, Margie, for that wonderful introduction. As she mentioned, my name is Kylie, and I have been doing the shorebird monitoring here in Sarasota County for, this is going to be my 6th season with Audubon Florida. So without further ado, I'll give you a little bit more background about me, although I think she touched on most of this. So being born and raised here in Sarasota, I grew up totally inspired and fascinated by nature. This is me on Lido Key when I was a little kid, before I knew that chasing the birds wasn't what we should do. So I am so very fortunate to have grown up here and grown up somewhere near the coast, because that is definitely such an important part of how I became interested in this and how I got involved in this work. So aside from growing up a nature nerd, I went to FSU to pursue my degree in biology. And at first I always thought I wanted to be a marine biologist. So when I graduated in 2016, I spent a few years doing different internships and exploring different jobs within the wildlife biology field. It took me to some amazing places like St. Croix, where I got to do leatherback sea turtle tagging and research. And also back home, I worked at Save Our Seabirds locally for several years doing wildlife, mostly avian rehabilitation and rescue. And I'm still very connected to Save Our Seabirds with the shorebird work that I do now. So yeah, finally I landed back home in Sarasota and I got my dream job. I really had no idea that there was a position that would pay me to walk the beaches and look for birds and educate people about them. And when I found out that this was something that I could do and I got the job, I ran with it and I've not looked back since. So yep, going into my 6th season this year. So I do have quite a bit of information I'm going to try and cover. So going right into it, beach nesting birds in Sarasota. We are coming into the nesting season right now. Nesting season technically starts February 15th, according to FWC. Up in the Panhandle, we do have a lot of nesting shorebirds that get started earlier. We actually are probably up to over a dozen snowy plover nests documented in the Panhandle, according to my counterparts up there, and possibly expecting chicks any day now, which is crazy because our snowy plovers down here in Sarasota really don't get started until March, maybe even April. So snowy plovers being shorebirds, they're going to get started a bit sooner. And then our seabirds, our colonial species, come in around April and May, and they start nesting then. So once nesting begins, it goes on throughout the summer and it's not synchronous. Sometimes you'll have a snowy plover nest in March and the nest fails and they'll start again in May. Same thing. It really just depends on different variables. If there's storms or major predation events that cause the birds to try and re-nest. But by the time October rolls around, we pretty much are all done with having chicks and our birds are fledging and heading out to go to their non-breeding sites. So of the protected beach nesting birds that we have, black skimmers are probably one of the most well-known in our area. And that is because we in Sarasota have one of the largest colonies of nesting black skimmers. Let's see. There we go, on Lido Key. So nesting for skimmers in recent years has been on Lido Key and on Longboat Key, but Lido Key is really just the hub for these birds. Our colony on Lido has been nesting there since I want to say 2015, and last year we had upwards of 1,100 individuals in the colony. Those aren't all going to be nesting individuals because some of those are going to be, you know, juvenile birds, birds that aren't yet of breeding age, but still the sheer number of over 1,000 birds that coming back every single year to the same beach, our beach, to nest, and the productivity that they have year after year has really been so easy to track Because let's see, when I started doing this monitoring, I think the nesting colony was about 600 birds. So in 6 years, you know, our population has grown substantially. Black skimmers can nest in colonies of hundreds of pairs. If you've seen them, you'll know what they look like when you get out to the beach. They're hard to miss, and you'll smell them usually a mile away too. There's a lot of bird feces going on in a colony that size. So females and males, they raise their chicks together. The chicks are covered in down feathers, and adults will often congregate, like you see here at this picture, by the shoreline to cool off. Oftentimes the chicks will be down there with them. And so we want to make sure that we're giving them plenty of space to rest down at the shoreline and cool off. This is a typical view that you'll see in the middle of the nesting season. They have a nesting area where they are on the upper beach with their eggs and with their chicks. But a lot of times in the middle of the day, they're not in that nesting area. They're down at the shoreline. And so when we see these large flocks hanging out at the shoreline, it's so vital to understand these are birds nesting in the heat of the summer in Florida, and they need to be able to access that cold water to refresh, to cool down, and to bring that coolness back to their chicks. So you can see here the adult is shading its eggs. For seabirds and shorebirds like the black skimmer, they lay their eggs directly on top of the sand. They don't bury them. And so that egg is essentially at risk of being baked in the sun if the bird is not able to keep it shaded. They'll go get their belly feathers wet and they'll come back and they'll get their chicks cooled down that way. So yeah, when we see a big group of birds at the beach down by the shoreline, we want to encourage people to give them space and walk around. Don't disturb them. So black skimmers are so named because of their unique bill. So this picture is one of my favorite pictures I've ever taken. You can see very clearly how the bill is shaped from both angles. So it's a laterally compressed bill, meaning that it's laterally compressed like a knife. So when you're looking at the bird head on, the razor thin bill is very obvious, but from the side, you can see that their bill is actually quite thick. And they're called skimmers because of the way they skim through the water to catch fish. So this is an adult skimmer in the background and a juvenile fledged skimmer that has just learned how to do some skimming and is practicing. You see they'll go with their bottom beak underneath the water and cut across like so. And as soon as they hit a fish, they snap down and catch it. It's a completely tactile way of feeding. So they don't actually have to see the fish. And a lot of times skimmers are actually not eating during the day. They're mainly crepuscular, meaning they forage at dawn and dusk. So you're not going to see the skimmers doing a whole lot except for loafing around on the beach during the day when we're trying to be at the beach too. So when we have 600 skimmers at the shoreline, we want to let them rest because they're going to be out all night catching fish to feed their babies. And here we have a video. This is a fledged skimmer just towards the end of the nesting season. So they start out looking like little fluff balls, but just after about 6 weeks, they're nearly the size of adults. You could see their bills already starting to get that change in the tone. And the bottom bill is starting to become elongated, larger than the top. At first, when they hatch, their bill top and bottom is the same size because they have to be able to pick up food that their parents give to them. But once they start having to learn how to skim, that bottom bill will grow out. So they do depend on their parents for food. Since they are seabirds, they eat purely fish. And the parents have to bring that fish to them until they're able to fly. So this is a term called semi-precocial. Our shorebirds, like the Snowy Plover, are precocial versus our seabirds being semi-precocial. So we'll talk a bit more about that when we get to the Snowy Plover section. All righty. I can't even tell you how much I love black skimmers. They're 100% my favorite. But they are not the only seabirds out there that we have on our beaches. The least tern is going to be the next most common nesting species that we have. And even though they are called the least tern, it's because they are the smallest tern species in North America. They are absolutely fierce and mighty for being diminutive in size. Let me see here. My buttons aren't exactly working. that turning for anybody else?
No, did your
Yeah.
froze
Oh.
on?
Okay, I'm having to use the arrow buttons instead of my computer arrow buttons, but that's okay. So least terns, this is probably one of my favorite pictures of a least tern I've ever taken. This is on Lido Key, one of the first years that I had gotten to see them nesting. They, like I said, are small but mighty. They are going to be one of the best defenders of their nest and chicks. The males and the females, they raise their chicks together and they mob predators by dive bombing them. They will poop on you and they're very vocal. So if you come across a least tern that seems very agitated, you're going to want to walk slowly and check your surroundings because there could very well be nests nearby. You can see here, this chick is covered in down feathers when it hatches. Again, that's a semi-precocial chick. So the tern is going to have to bring fish, whole fish to the chick to feed it until it's of size to go fishing for itself. And we're very fortunate in Sarasota County. We actually do have some sizable least tern colonies that are nesting on our beaches. But this species in particular, as well as American oyster catchers, have really grown to adapt to nest on gravel rooftops and other alternative habitat because of the decline in available beach habitat. So, you know, in a lot of different parts of our area in Tampa Bay, there's going to be more least terns nesting on these rooftops. And that's a whole different set of challenges that are involved in rooftop nesting. We're always looking for people who may be interested in monitoring rooftops too. So we'll talk a bit more about that towards the end and how you can get in touch with our rooftop biologist if that's interesting to you. So another little video here, least tern courtship. The male brings in a fish for the female and kind of stands behind her and wags it around. And hopefully, if she is interested, he can give her the fish and they copulate. It was a little bit quick and a little bit shaky, so I don't know if you saw, but they did not copulate. He tried and she just took the fish and ran. But once they have formed a pair, the male and the female least tern will jointly take care of the nest. This picture shows one of the terns bringing in a fish for the one that is incubating the egg. You can see the egg underneath. And if you recall from the skimmer egg picture earlier, the egg shading and the size is obviously very different. These terns being very small have a much smaller egg, but they also have a more sandy colored egg. I always kind of think it's interesting to look at this in comparison to snowy plover eggs. Least tern and snowy plover eggs almost look completely the same. Black skimmer and oyster catcher eggs almost look completely the same. And those are shorebirds versus seabirds, but about the same size. Kind of getting off on a tangent. I'm just like thinking about something that I've always kind of found an interesting phenomena, how these different shorebird seabird species have these similarities. Here we go with a least tern defending against a predator nearly its size, ghost crabs. So ghost crabs are just one of many predators that these birds have to worry about. And if you're something the size of a snowy plover or a least tern, a ghost crab is just about as big as you are, and it can take a chick and or eggs. Especially if your chicks are cute and little, like a little least tern chick is. These chicks are probably, I would say, between a week and a half old. Least tern chicks are one of the faster developing of our beach nesting birds. They normally are about the size of an adult and flight capable at 3 weeks. Our snowy plovers and our black skimmers, however, take about 4 weeks to become flight capable. And on the topic of snowy plovers, so this is going to be our third and most common beach nesting species here in Sarasota. And unlike the skimmers and the least terns, the snowy plover is a shorebird species. So there's a few biological differences in how they nest that are related to that. Snowy plovers are unfortunately the most at risk of the species that we have here nesting in Sarasota County. They have been losing vital habitat, and as a shorebird species, they are not colonial. They are solitary. So it's just a male and a female that defend a territory together. And because they don't have the power of numbers and the defense of numbers, they really do just rely on being completely camouflaged. And that has done well for them in the past, but you can imagine as a snowy plover, if your job is to be camouflaged on a beach like Siesta, where we have the numbers of visitors that we have, especially this time of year with the onset of spring break and summer coming around, you know, you're probably not going to be noticed by a person walking by that could easily step on you, or somebody who's throwing a frisbee and not realizing inadvertently that they might be disturbing the birds. So we put up these nesting zones around areas where we have active snowy plover pairs scraping in an attempt to try and give them space to nest successfully. This unfortunately has been a site that has not had much productivity. It used to be, and there's quite a few reasons for the dwindling success of snowy plovers on Siesta Key. To start, this vegetation that you see, this is a natural issue. This picture was taken, I want to say, in 2019. The vegetation is now overgrown, and it's created a loss of a lot of the suitable beach habitat we had on Siesta. Between that and human disturbance issues, we haven't had snowy plovers nesting on Siesta for a year now, and that is kind of alarming because snowy plovers have nested or attempted to nest on Siesta every year, as far as I know, for decades. And last year was the first documented year since nesting has been surveyed that there were no nests on Siesta Key. So hopefully we can see nest success elsewhere. Since nesting on Siesta has dwindled, we have been seeing snowy plovers moving to Lido and Longboat. We have had chicks hatch on Lido and Longboat, at least in the past few years. However, you can see these chicks are not all, are still pretty vulnerable. If we do get fortunate enough to have those eggs make it to the 4-week mark and hatch, this little chick has to make it 4 weeks before it's able to fly. So do a little bit of a game here. Can you find the snowy plover? I'll try and give everybody a few seconds with each picture before I reveal. This is what I get to do for work. I get to go and try and stalk these birds and figure out where they're nesting. So this is where the snowy plover here is on a nest. Very dense vegetation. On Siesta, like I said, this vegetation overgrowth has been happening, and our birds have kind of adapted to nest in denser vegetation than in other parts of the state because they don't have any other option. So you can see here, sparse vegetation is typically what they like, but on Siesta, this is a lot more typical of a nest site. And this is a nest scrape. So when I'm out surveying the beaches, which my official start date for Audubon Florida surveys will be next week, I walk along the upper beach on Siesta, on Lido, in these lightly vegetated areas, and I look for these little divots in the sand. It doesn't look all that different from a footprint, but if you know what to search for, essentially I look for the birds to lead me to these scrapes, and then also their feet prints. You can kind of follow them back to find nest scrapes that way. And here you see a beautiful photo by Mary Lundenberg. This is a nest site that's a lot more shell. Here, a nest site that's in dense vegetation. So snowy plovers can nest in open beach, vegetated sand, but typically sparsely vegetated areas. So that upper area of the beach is where you're mostly going to find them. And during nesting season, I try to just encourage anybody and everybody to stay further towards the water, because you really never know if you're going to be walking around near a potential nest site and could cause a potential disturbance. So here you see the adorable snowy plover with her prime nesting spot. And maybe you didn't notice, but there's a little chick in the back. So these chicks are precocial. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a difference between semi-precocial with shorebird or seabirds rather, and shorebirds, which have precocial chicks. The shorebirds have precocial chicks, meaning these birds are covered in down feathers and highly mobile shortly upon hatching and able to essentially fend for themselves. So precocial chicks don't rely on the parents to feed them. Unlike least terns and black skimmers, snowy plovers mostly eat little invertebrates, bugs, and the chicks can run within hours of hatching and get their own food. So Snowy Plover mom and dad really have their work cut out for them, having to chase these little chicks up and down the beach, trying to keep them alive and out of trouble. And here we have a short video of a local Snowy Plover. She's a little bit of our plover mascot, our plover celebrity. This is Miss Sanibel. So you might have noticed she had a couple bands on her leg. So this bird was banded by a counterpart researcher down in Sanibel for the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation, Miss Audrey Albrecht. And after her first year, after she hatched in Sanibel, she moved to Sarasota. She has attempted to nest on Siesta, or had attempted to nest on Siesta every year until about 2020. She was never successful getting chicks to hatch on Siesta. So you can see her bands here. She moved up to, I want to say, Honeymoon Island State Park, and there she successfully fledged chicks. So, you know, there are sites that are still having productivity for snowy plovers in our area. Unfortunately, here in Sarasota, we just really haven't been seeing it. And again, those key issues are going to be increased disturbance, increased predators, and a decrease in suitable habitat. So we look at these birds and we see they're very vulnerable. They're all considered state threatened species. So what can we do as far as concerned citizens, as far as people who are interested in birds and nature, to help conserve these species and the habitats that they need? And our answer for that at Audubon is stewardship. So stewardship sites are essentially areas around that have nesting and resting locations for these imperiled species. And throughout the Tampa Bay area, we have nesting colonies all throughout Pinellas County, and then down through Sarasota and Manatee counties. We have had nesting on all of our local beaches, from Anna Maria, Longboat, Toledo, and Siesta. But Lido and Siesta are definitely the you know, two focal beaches that have had nesting in the last few years, with Longboat kind of catching up there. There's been a good amount of nesting on Longboat. And so Lido Beach, if you're unfamiliar, this is a map of Lido Key. It's kind of the small kidney bean shaped key in the middle. You got Longboat to the north and Siesta to the south. And Siesta Key Beach, I always joke, is, you know, the #1 beach in the country, oftentimes a huge tourist destination for people. But Lido Key Beach is the #1 beach for beach nesting birds. They have had so much success here in the last few years. This main area in the north part of Lido has been where the black skimmers and least terns have been successful. And then as of 2 years ago, there was a large renourishment project for South Lido, which renourishment project is when there's been heavy erosion to the beach. Taxpayers and the Army Corps of Engineers, other partners come together to make sure that sand is able to be pumped out onto the beach to replenish that shoreline. And so when that project completed, we saw an expansion of available habitat on South Lido. For the first time in 8 years, we saw nesting after that project. We had a really successful least tern colony nest that year. So, you know, that's something to be said about these projects that are going on the beach. You see that erosion is happening, sea level rise is happening, and we are always scrambling to try and fight nature. But when we do these projects, it can have a positive impact on the wildlife as well, because we're restoring that habitat for them as well, as long as we can make sure we share it with them. So as you can see here, this is a little bit of a different imagery, but the black skimmers primarily nesting on the main part of Lido Beach, and then we've had least tern and snowy plover nesting further north. This is a few years back, this imagery. This sand that has come out on the northern tip is essentially almost completely eroded to the vegetation line now. And I will say that's something that I've really enjoyed over the last 6 years of doing this work and being out on the beach so consistently. You are able to see just how the topography of the beach changes every year. And our shorelines really are so dynamic. And this is something that our beach nesting birds have come to adapt to. And so it's kind of always a fun start to my season, trying to figure out what the beach looks like and where the birds are going to want to end up this year. Jury's out for where we end up seeing them nest. Siesta Key, as I said, last year was the first year in recent history that we had no attempted nesting on Siesta Key, but historically they nested on the northern area of Siesta Key. You can see the main beach is kind of there in the center, and then as you go north, there's a good amount of natural vegetated areas, and that's always been the attractant for the Snowy Plovers. Unfortunately, despite the fact that they do have some suitable habitat there, there's just been so many issues with disturbance and predation. First and foremost, predation has been the driver for limiting nesting success on Siesta. Crows are the #1 predator, I would say, of our Snowy Plovers locally, and of most of our beach birds. Crows and gulls are the key predators. And crows are just too darn smart for their own good. If anyone knows a bit about crows, they have the average intelligence of a 5-year-old child. They are social birds, so they work together and they teach their next generations information. So when we have a species like that has learned how to pick out a snowy plover, which only relies on camouflage to be successful, you kind of start to see that small population that didn't really have more than 12 individuals to begin with, really start to dwindle. So back to bird stewardship, these are the areas that we see our nesting. And so this is the areas that we focus on with trying to educate, and that we recruit volunteers to go out and be stewards. So stewardship essentially here in the Sun Coast, which is our region, we call it. We were the first region to start the stewardship program, and now we are focusing on several different sites here in Sarasota, all sorts of sites along the entire coastline of Florida through the Florida Shorebird Alliance, which is this first logo up here. It's a partnership that focuses on shorebird conservation. It's made up of partners such as Fish and Wildlife, Audubon, and then all sorts of local partners, municipalities. We've gotten so much support here locally from the city of Sarasota, Sarasota County, of course, Sarasota Audubon and Manatee Audubon Society, Venice Audubon Society. So all of these partners are in fact a part of the Florida Shorebird Alliance. And if doing more to protect shorebirds is something that you think you'd be interested in, the Florida Shorebird Alliance website is a great resource to look into where there might be sites near you. Stewardship is something that is absolutely effective. It has been proven that when we have stewards at sites, they are less likely to experience disturbance, and therefore it is just so important in pushing forward our coastal conservation and policy work. The data that we're able to collect from our volunteers out there is what we're able to use when we go forth and try to, look for management policy changes to make sure that these birds are getting the adequate protection they need. So in the end, we really depend on you guys, and every member, every Audubon Society chapter is also crucial in all of these goals and all these projects that we're working on. This is a great group picture that we took, one of my first years. And this was obviously pre-COVID times. COVID did take a bit of it was a bit of a challenge with COVID, as it was for all of us. Meeting in person was a little bit more difficult, and getting together closely was difficult. But as COVID, starts to, I don't know, are we through it yet, guys? Sometimes I have to ask myself, it seems like we've been in it for years, but it is getting better. And so we will be having these trainings, these meetups outdoors to start recruiting volunteers for this coming nesting season. So my information is going to be posted, and definitely always reach out if you're interested. It's a great, very easy, light commitment for volunteering. If you like birds and you like the beach and you like talking to people about birds, that's all that we ask. It's education and it's inspiration. Something that I've grown to realize over the last 6 years of doing this work is you can't blame people for what they don't know. And it was frustrating for me to learn to overcome, because at first, when I see a group of people chasing birds or feeding seagulls, I want to respond by saying, why are you doing this? Stop doing this. But when you come at it of an angle of educating these people about the consequences of the actions, then they're able to understand you're not just somebody trying to tell somebody what to do. There is a reason. And when people start to learn to care about these birds, that's when we can foster this whole community around protecting them and sharing the shore, which is one of Audubon Florida's big messages. So it's really inspiring work and rewarding work as well. Not to mention, these birds are actually legally protected. So that does give a little bit of credence to all of the education that we are out there doing. We're doing it, and we're doing it to tell people, these birds are important, and legally you shouldn't be disturbing them. Anything from walkers to predators to beach toys, drones, fireworks, dogs. There's so many different disturbances, potential disturbances that can affect these birds. They truly are incredibly vulnerable, trying to make a successful nesting season on Gulf Coast beaches that are incredibly highly visited. So every single thing that we can do to help them be successful is critical. And so we do have rules, legal rules protecting them. They are considered state threatened species. The snowy plover oyster catcher, which we didn't touch on too much because we don't have them nesting locally, skimmer and least tern are considered imperiled state threatened species. We do also have another species that we focus on, the Wilson's plover. Again, I didn't touch on it too much just because we don't have them nesting locally, except down south at Stump Pass, I believe we've had them nesting. So because these 4 species are protected against take, that means they are protected legally against harassment and harm. And those definitions can be expanded. Harassment, creating the likelihood of injury through activities that annoy wildlife to the extent to disrupt normal behavioral patterns like breeding, feeding, or sheltering. And so something as simple as chasing the skimmers at the shoreline is technically harassment, and it is technically illegal. And so when we're out there on the beach, we are not enforcement, but we do want to try and impart that information in a way that gets people engaged and engaged enough to care. So we do have some of these signs out on the beach that you should definitely keep an eye out for, because this will indicate that there's nesting nearby. These signs are also very useful as stewardship tools for when there aren't actual stewards present, because they have all the information that you need on them. So it'll say the species that is nesting in the area. If it's a snowy plover, for instance, you can say, oh, it's a single snowy plover, and that's why I don't see anything inside of this giant roped off area, because it's one invisible bird trying to stay invisible. If it's a black skimmer colony, there's no chance that you'll miss it because there's about 1,100 of them. So on these signs, it says the specific species, it says what the rule is, the legal rule that protects them, and then it also has the number to report violations for the wildlife alert hotline, and that number goes to FWC. So anybody on the beach who is out there and observing any sort of violation, may it be a dog on the beach or somebody entering a posted area without authorization, disturbing the birds, you should definitely call that number. Anybody can be a bird steward at any time, as long as you're informed. Now, these signs, when these come out, you definitely want to be careful where you're stepping, because this is our sign that we put out for when we have flightless chicks on the beach. The skimmers, when their flightless chicks are starting to leave the nesting area, they go down from the nesting area on the upper beach to the water to try and cool off. And so we kind of create like a skimmer chick highway, where we've got a path between the colony and the shoreline for them to be able to travel undisturbed. And we've gotten so much support. Like I said, our partners are great. Sarasota City basically told us, I don't see why you shouldn't just rope that whole area off to make sure nobody's sitting in there bothering the birds and disrupting that critical walkway. So definitely keep an eye out for those signs. They'll normally show up around June. We start seeing our first chicks. And that's all I got for you guys. I'm happy to answer any questions, and thanks so much.
Kylie, thank you. Before you do anything else, how do people reach you to
Yes.
commit to you?
Yes, absolutely. So I've got my contact information here on the screen.
It's
That
a
is my
little hard
personal-
to read. Can you?
Oh, is that okay? I will put it in the chat as well.
Yes, and can you read it once out loud or maybe two times?
Yes.
Because it's so important people can reach you.
Absolutely. So my email is kylie.wilson@audubon.org, and that's my name, KYLIE.WILSON@audubon.org. And then my phone number is my personal cell, 941-266-5407. If you are out on the beaches, if you're local, if you're visiting and you see a nest, please call me. I don't care if it's a random number. I am the only staff member that monitors in Sarasota County, so I can't be at all the beaches at all the times, and these birds can lay an egg any day. So I really do depend so much on all of our partners, all of our community members to keep me informed of what they're seeing out there too.
Thank you so much. And if you need her to give that information again before we stop, please ask again in the chat, or make sure you see the chat. So as you might expect, Kylie, there are two questions. The first two questions are about red tide. And the first one is, how is the red tide outbreak affecting feeding for our nesting birds? Because apparently the organisms of red tide can be deadly for fish, as we know from when we see all the dead fish.
Yes. So I will say I am not a red tide researcher, but over the years, I've definitely done some research on my own to understand what it is that red tide is. And it is deadly. So red tide is Karenia brevis. It's a dinoflagellate and an algae that is essentially blooming right now. And it exists all the time in our waterways, but it's an algae. And if you think about how algae bloom, fertilizer and nutrients can cause these algal blooms to persist. And when you have a red tide bloom, it depletes the water of oxygen, which is what kills the fish. And so then these fish show up on our shores, and the birds are scavenging on these fish, which have the neurotoxins within their tissues. And that can build up. It's a process called bioaccumulation. So back in 2018, we had one of the worst red tides I've ever seen from growing up here. And we had a lot of birds that were showing up sick to save our seabirds. It's a bit of a delayed effect because it depends on how much of that toxin the bird accumulates in their system. I will say that for our birds, our shorebirds and our seabirds, the tactic that I've noticed over the years is they start foraging inland in freshwater ponds. So the black skimmers, during the nesting season that year, I saw them going across to Longboat Key Club, to that long pond that they have along the main Gulf of Mexico Drive. And the skimmers were just tearing it up, catching all sorts of freshwater fish, bluegills, avoiding using the coastal area. So hopefully, the birds are realizing there's not food available and they're searching elsewhere, but it is definitely a concern that we have to watch out for.
It's not a fair question to you at all. Do you have any idea how long this persists?
So I was going to say, we've had it. You can look at FWC's website. They have updated status about the different testing points throughout the state, but I want to say it's been persisting for months now at some level. It's obviously not always been as severe, but over the last 10 months, I want to say, I think we've had some version of red tide. It's not typical for it to be happening in cooler months as well. So that's something that I think is a little bit alarming. I want to say that I could give more information about red tide, but again, it's just not something that is area of focus for me. I'm learning a lot more about it. I'm actually enrolled in you said you have Dr. Catherine coming to give a presentation on Wednesday at the Nature Center. I just took a Master Naturalist program with her, and she is phenomenal. She's so educated and has just a wealth of knowledge about these sort of issues. And so I think if anyone wants to learn more about red tide, should check out that presentation on Wednesday.
Thank you so much for being willing to answer that tough question, which is, you're doing your darndest to save them. And it really isn't your natural area to answer, but everybody wants to know is.
Yeah.
So Phyllis White wants to know, do they prefer particular fish, and are there healthy populations of them?
So that's a really interesting question. There's a professor at Eckerd who's been studying black skimmers, Dr. Beth Fories, and she is the one who has banded our local populations to monitor where they're going, as well as she studies the fish prey intake and has been taking pictures or collecting pictures for years. I don't know if she's yet come to publish anything from that study, but I do say that we see a lot of needlefish. We see a lot of bluegill when they're foraging in freshwater fish. This is speaking particularly about the skimmers, but essentially because these birds are surface foraging, that limits them a little bit to the type of prey that they're eating. They're not going to eat, benthic species that are lower in the water column. They're pretty much focusing on those top level fish.
So Larry Master, whoops, I just lost the question. Are any Larry Master wants to know, do any of these birds nest on beaches in Venice or Inglewood?
So it's a good question. We have yearly monitoring that happens in February. It's the first week of February winter shorebird survey. And this winter shorebird survey kind of gives us an idea of where our non-breeding species or our breeding populations are rather in the winter. And then during the breeding season, there's monthly surveys of all of our beaches. So we do have surveys of the beaches in Venice, and they have just not shown any nesting species out there over the years. So we don't focus so much on those beaches just because I'm one person and I can't be everywhere. But the short answer is no. We don't have nesting actively on Venice and haven't. However, it's of course possible. So we always got to check out those beaches every once in a while. If you see birds out there, please call me. If there's snowy plovers or least terns in Venice, I need to know.
When you talk, are you the only person? I mean, you've got all these volunteers, but are you the only person that sounds like you're full-time professional going to all these beaches? And do we need to clone you?
So for Sarasota County, I am the anchor steward. So I have a fabulous network of other professionals that most of them are based in Pinellas, where we have a lot of other sites. But in Sarasota, it's mostly just me. And then I do have so many fantastic volunteers that can help back me up. You guys know who you are, Claire Herzog, who's I'm pretty sure on the call. She's done siesta surveys to help me out over the years. Stu Wilson's done plenty of surveys on Lido. And if, becoming more skilled in identifying shorebirds and learning how to become a surveyor according to the protocol, if that's something you're interested in, I am happy to train people. There is actually a lot of need for qualified shorebird monitors right now. Anytime that there's a beach renourishment project or beach development project during the nesting season, FWC requires for there to be shorebird monitoring on a daily basis. And we purely just do not have enough people who are qualified to do these surveys. And clearly, when we have development, we want someone out there making sure there's no negative impacts. So I'm happy to train people if you want to change your career, learn how to become a shorebird steward and surveyor.
Good. Let's visualize you get a lot more help because you're so good at what you do and it's so needed. Bob Clark wants to know, a few years ago, there was an experiment to put fake bad tasting eggs on Siesta Key to train fish crows to avoid snowy plover eggs. How did that go?
Yes, so that was the emetic egg experiment that happened about right before my first year, so that would have been 2017 and 2018, we did some other non-lethal management methods to try and mitigate the crow predation. And essentially we tried a bunch of things and the crows were just too smart and figured it out. With the emetic egg experiment, we had to no longer do that because the crows took the poisonous eggs and then buried them. And then we were having buried poisonous eggs on a public beach with children and stuff. So we couldn't have that. We were able to recover those eggs, but once we realized that was a problem, we had to stop. So we tried an electrical shock experiment, which is something we did over the years and has been proven to have some limited success. Here, it's been more successful in Pinellas County areas where it's been tried, but Beth Voorhees again was the lead on those studies, and she described the siesta key crows as the Einsteins of the crows. They picked at the egg that shocked them and realized it was a fake egg and actually tore at it to get the wires separated. So essentially, it was a fake nest. If you imagine like a pizza pan and then a hole in the center of the pizza pan is cut out so that you have a hole where the sand is. Cover the pizza pan with sand and you kind of make a little fake nest in that center area. And then you have the pizza pan connected to wires. Little fake eggs have wires inside of them. And you connect it to like a chicken coop electric fence. It's not going to, kill the birds, but it's just kind of like a shock collar for a dog type of shock. And when they stand on the pizza plate and they eat the egg, they complete the circuit and they get a shock. And it's supposed to teach them to not want to do it anymore. But our crows said no. They still kept eating all the snowy plover eggs. And I've had to do a couple of different presentations about all these different non-lethal managements that we've tried, because eventually what we came down to is the only way to really minimize the effects of crows is to determine that we need lethal management. And that's a bit of a hairy issue.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Somebody else asked the same thing. Is there anything you can ultimately do?
Yeah, FWC has a predation management biologist, and it's their entire job to, focus on the predation problems in our region and understand if there's an imbalance and what we need to do to correct that imbalance. And over the years, I will say the population of crows has just become too high, and it is causing that imbalance locally. So crow management has been one of the ultimate issues. I do see a chat about nest covers, like in the north with piping plovers. There's been nest exclosures. We've had a lot of talk about that in our state. And for whatever reason, there's just at the upper level, people don't think it would be as effective here. Predator exclosures are much better at defending the nests from coyotes and mammalian predators, but avian predators will just continue to harass birds in their nesting exclosure, and we'll wait until the chicks leave. It's kind of like a bullseye because now you've put a big box over the nest. So could it work? Possibly. We would need funding and somebody to support that project though.
Becky Adlam asks, is anyone monitoring passage key birds?
Yes, Audubon Florida has a coastal biologist who monitors the different offshore sites, like they monitor Nora Roberts Bay, they monitor all of those rookery islands throughout the bays in Sarasota and Pinellas, and so they do look at passage key, which is interesting in its own right. It's, a wildlife management area that's not supposed to have anyone on it, and yet it's an island and there's not a whole lot of enforcement stopping people from getting out there. So
somebody asked, actually the same person asked, how is the 4th of July impact handled?
Okay, so 4th of July is absolutely our most desperate time of year for volunteers because we are at peak season then, and also fireworks are one of the highest issues with the summer months as far as concerns for disturbance. I will say over the last 6 years of doing this job in Sarasota County, I think that our community has really grown to appreciate what we have and is pretty good about not disturbing the birds. I have not had issues really with fireworks locally. St. Pete and Tampa Bay, however, they have much larger municipal beaches. St. Pete Beach is massive, and they struggle a lot with firework disturbance. Again, Siesta Key has its own fireworks show, but like I said, now we don't really see nesting on Siesta. So it's primarily focusing on the Lido and Longboat areas here.
So somebody asked, I'm not sure I really understand the question. Do you try to ban any of the Snowy Plovers?
Oh, I think they meant banned, like put bans on them.
Oh, yes, that would make more sense.
We have, but unfortunately we banded one chick that fledged because it was the only chick that fledged that year in 2020. And couple weeks later, it was found dead from emaciation. So another important thing to understand with these shorebirds is that even if they fledge, they still are vulnerable because they need to have a suitable foraging habitat to get the nutrients they need. And especially with snowy plover chicks, if there's not good foraging habitat in the area and nesting habitat in the area, then they might not survive post-fledging. So there's so many different pieces to the puzzle that go into protecting these birds.
The parents aren't able to support them when they're fledged. I mean, you see so many begging fledged.
Yeah.
Girls.
So for that particular bird, and this is an issue that we have with snowy plovers because they're just so darn cute. Everybody wants to go see them and get their picture. And they are precocial, so they can run around for hours. They could go miles away from where they initially nested. And, when you have birds that are running around trying to evade predators, trying to evade people, and trying to find food, it's just too much of an energy input needed versus what they're able to collect, I suppose. I don't know if the habitat conditions were poor that year. They just weren't finding good food. Yeah. There's so many questions. Snowy plovers in the panhandle, I will say there's about 80% of our snowy plovers statewide population nests in the panhandle, and they're highly successful in the panhandle, probably because the panhandle has these massive beaches that are pristine and untouched and undeveloped, like at Tyndall Air Force Base, where you can't have, human visitors. And that's where we have like the hub of snowy plovers. Here, they just try the best they can.
Claire Herzog said, are there any American oyster catchers nesting on roofs in Sarasota County? She said she didn't know they were roof nesters.
Yeah, so we don't have them in Sarasota County that I know of, but in the last year or two, there have been kind of a explosion of oyster catchers nesting on rooftops in Pinellas County. And I want to say, I think 5 new oyster catcher roofs were found just last year. So that's really great because oyster catchers, we don't see them nesting in Sarasota. There's just a not sufficient nesting habitat, and they're finding that alternative in some areas. However, nesting on a roof is not easy either. So definitely, if you're interested in rooftop nesting, I can talk to you guys about Kara Cook. She's our rooftop biologist, and I'm happy to forward her information to anybody. She might be a good speaker too, to tell you guys all about that.
So Kathy Paris asks, are there any prospects for getting local law enforcement or even Florida, well,
I got you. FWC Rangers involved in enforcing laws.
Rangers more involved in enforcing laws to protect BNBs. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with BNBs, but
beach nesting birds. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yes and no. I feel like we have a really great connection with our local law enforcement. The Sarasota Police Department has been a great supporter of our Shorebird program over the years. Unfortunately, when it comes to their resources, they are also limited. And when it comes to having a call about a dog on the beach, or when it comes to having a call about an active crime, you can see where the priorities are going to be. And I do think that there's been a lot of movement to help educate the community. So on Lido Key, for instance, every single access now has a sign that states the no dog ordinance, and every single access on the beach says no dogs allowed. Here's the city ordinance. So now nobody can say, I didn't know, I didn't see a sign. So that's kind of the first step, is, making sure that that information about the laws is readily available. And then you have to hope that the community can get behind the topic and reach out to people, educate people. Hey, you moved here recently, you can't have your dogs on the beach here, we've got birds nesting. So yes, I want to say that enforcement's going to get better, but at the same time, I think a more likely way to affect change is going to be focusing on the community and getting anybody and everybody willing to be enforcers in a way. I don't know if that was a really great answer. I can't say that.
That's all you can say, Kylie. I know.
Yeah,
You're doing the best you can.
If we want to affect change, it starts with our commissioners and our government and letting them know these issues are important to us. So,
and everybody, please let your commissioners know, and not speaking personally, let your commissioners know that you will not put up with development that affects the beaches and the shorebirds and the marshes. It's a serious problem, and it's a problem we all need to take charge of, and let people know that if you don't save the birds, you're threatening your own health, us as humans.
Saving their habitats saves us too, because we all need it. So
we all need it. Speaking of habitat, somebody made a comment that probably is worth repeating, although I'm not asking you for an answer here, Kylie. Holly says at the Tiger Bay meeting last week, they said this red tide bloom storm by stormwater from Hurricane Ian is expected to last through year end. The main culprit is the Gulf temperature, which did not go below 60 degrees this winter, which is the threshold that kills algae. So, that I don't want to get into global warming, and I'm not sure it's global warming, but we certainly have global change, and we can all vouch for that. So
I will say the water has been too cold for me to get into it, but I guess it's not too cold for the algae. So that's unfortunate.
Speaking of hurricanes, and how were the beaches, when you talked about beaches and erosion, how was erosion? Do you know how it was affected by the direct hit in Fort Myers area? Were those beaches really
I will
shredded
say,
away?
Yeah, I will say our counterparts down south, where Ian caused incredible destruction, they are definitely reeling. I know immediately after the hurricane, there were not a lot of people able to get access to sites, and only locals were really going out to monitor sites. I don't think monitoring was really happening for several weeks, just because transportation, roads were down. It was a really hard hit for them. The silver lining, and I can't say this is going to be the case there, but after we had, I want to say it was Hurricane Michael that hit the Panhandle, there was clear changes to the habitat. It basically took out a lot of dense vegetation and covered this area that was really vegetated with sand, a new layer of sand, and it opened up a bunch of sparse habitat that snowy plovers like, and snowy plover productivity the next year completely spiked. Magnitudes. Wow. I can't think of it exactly, the numbers off the top of my head, but the monitoring report from the Florida Shorebird Alliance that year, it was astounding. So there is, again, these species have nested on beaches long before we were here, and they are able to adapt to these storm events. Sometimes the storm events are helpful in fixing a part of the habitat that has maybe become overgrown. So all we can do is hope to minimize human disturbance, but they got to handle how they navigate nature on their own.
Mhm.
Kylie, I can't thank you enough. That
Have
Jean
you
did-
finished all the questions, Margie? I think I see
I
6
think we-
more. Is it
Well, Larry Master wanted to ask about Stump Pass, and then we're done, I think, with questions.
Yeah, Stump Pass is definitely a important site in the area, and one that has become more of a nesting hub in recent years. It's just outside of my territory. I don't cover Stump Pass, but we do have the Friends of Stump Pass State Park, and I believe the Florida State Park department that runs a stewardship program down there. So it is being monitored, just not through me.
So does everybody who needs Kylie's phone number have it? Because Kylie, what Kylie's doing is so very, very, very important for all of us. So please make sure that you contact her or contact one of us to make sure you can reach her. Kylie, you're doing a fabulous job. I'm sure Mother
Kylie.
Earth sends you hugs every single night.
I like
when
to
you
listen
go
to the
bed,
birds in
and
my
thanks you
backyard.
for your wonderful stewardship of the planet and the beaches. And thank you so much. We all need to really send you good vibes, and let's hope that the red tide and the insensitive tourists leave the birds alone. Thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk, and hopefully I'll see y'all out on the beaches soon.
Kylie, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you
Really.
very much. Bye bye
Have,
now.
and then let's talk about next.
Yes. Oh, shall I read the?
I
So-
will put it up
Thank-
there.
So next April 10th, we're going to have John O. Miller talk about more than you thought possible about cabbage palms. It's the Florida state tree. He's author of a really great book called The Palmetto Book, Histories and Mysteries. He's our very own Sarasota person. And I understand that this is a fascinating topic. Jean told me he just really, really first rate. And we all need to know more about palmettos. And our own golf course here, they use the hurricane to cut them all down. And I don't understand why they were doing that. But maybe Jono can enlighten us about all why we need to preserve the palmetto, the cabbage palms. So please make sure you come next month, April
He is
10th.
a very entertaining speaker, and you will be amazed at how awesome the cabbage palm is.
Mhm.
Jono presents it in such a way that you will really enjoy it.
Mhm.
So, all right.
So
Good night,
see you next
everyone.
month.
Yes.